Are you living life, or are you living life? There's a difference. On one spectrum, you are fully immersed. You are fully present with the divine. You are fully present with the world around you and the people. On the other hand, you could just be living life. You could just be going through the motions, going in and going out, doing your thing, but not ever fully feeling like you are there. That's called autopilot. And as you get older, or you're going through a very difficult time, you may be living in autopilot. Just going through the motions, everything's feeling mundane, you don't feel emotionally attached. This video is all about how to get out of living on autopilot, how to be in the present moment. But it is those who stay towards the very end who will get the most out of this lesson. I want to start with a story. One from my own past, one from my own life experience. It started when I was 14. It's when I started immersing myself with people, surrounding myself with people who were struggling, who were hurting. And they would self-harm, they would go through some really difficult things and put themselves through difficult situations because they saw no other way out. And that had a huge toll on me. The amount of times I had to, and I'm not saying this to say like, hey, look at me, but this is just where I was when I was younger. I would legit, when I was younger, stay up. I would be with people who would try to unalive themselves. Yeah, that put a huge emotional tax on me. I was surrounded by people. Those were my friends who didn't want to be around anymore, and they would try to do something about it. And yet there was someone who really cared and said like, hey, don't. Now, that's a story for another time, but my point to that was I grew into this thing called derealization and depersonalization. Something I had to go see a therapist for, get professional help. And derealization and depersonalization are some disorders of the depression scale. There would be times I remember where I didn't even feel like life was real. And that's a dangerous game. When you don't feel like life is real, you start thinking some crazy things. Thinking like, I could just respawn if I were to do something crazy. I would sometimes watch my body from an outside view, looking down, seeing the actions of what was myself, despite not actually really feeling like this is me. I'm just watching a video of myself doing things. Life seems so unreal. I was looking at myself in a way that I'm like, this is just a Sims character. This is just a video game. That's where the depersonalization kicked in. I remember there's this one moment in my math class where I literally closed my eyes and opened them, and the whole class would go by. I genuinely did not remember a single thing. And I remember one day texting my dad after school. This was in middle school. I texted my dad after school, hey, I'm going to go check in with my math teacher. I'll be a little bit late to pick up. And I went to my math teacher at the end of the day, Miss JD, and I don't understand this math. Could you help me? This is basic math, like pre-algebra. And she's like, yeah, of course, Spencer. And she opened the whiteboard marker, brought it to the board, and started with, okay, so essentially, we are going to take this math equation and I closed my eyes to blink and I opened it again, and the whole board was filled with equations and writing that I did not even remember her writing. And she said, do you understand, Spencer? Yeah, I understand. And I knew I had to go as I looked at the time as a whole 40 minutes had passed and I didn't remember any of it. Maybe that's you. Maybe to not. that extreme, or maybe it's a little worse. But with that being said, you may be living on autopilot, going through the daily tasks, feeling the mundaneness of it all, and not feeling present. Well, I'm here to say, nearly 7 years later, I haven't experienced a moment of autopilot and depersonalization and derealization to that extent in a very long time. It is possible, but without knowing and having guidance, you're going to stay in that autopilot. Now, I am not speaking from a standpoint of professionalism, but I could speak from my own personal firsthand accounts and share with you what I did and the lessons that I had learned in that professional help, to share how I got out of it. When you're living on autopilot, you're detached. Nothing may feel real, you feel burnt out, you feel tired. I'll say for me, is because I was living in two different places. Not in the physical spirit, but in the mind. I was living in two worlds. The past and the future. It had taken me a long time to understand that my autopilot, my depression, was the past. It was me dealing with the hard traumas of what had happened to me and what I was going through in the past. I hadn't fully taken the time to process. And because of that, I was living so far in the future where I felt so much anxiety. Depression is living in the past and anxiety is living in the future. But I wasn't living in the future. I wasn't living in the past. Physically, where was I? I was in the present. But I didn't feel like I was living in the present. So how did I, after years of working on this, change? I took the time to see how I could start living in the present. I looked at the world around me, and despite me seeing my body from an outside view, I saw myself, and I was noticing everything about myself, not being able to identify with myself. But I also thought, what about the world around me? I stopped listening to music for 6.5 months last year. Why? I was going through a lot. My dad had 4 cardiac arrests. He was on dialysis. He was having some severe physical and mental health issues. And that really put a huge toll on my family. Even now, I'm still dealing with that, and it's still very, very hard. And in the spur of that, when my dad had 4 cardiac arrests, when he essentially became just so messed up from the 4 cardiac arrests mentally, it put a huge emotional toll on me. I felt like I had to just work, do the next thing and distract myself. I didn't allow myself to just sit with it and process and grieve and be sad and be hurt, disappointed. And so when I was going from one thing to the other, whether that was to class, to work, to class, to hanging out with friends, to hanging out with my girlfriend at the time, I had gotten to a point where I'd been doing that for so long where I didn't even feel like I was allowing myself to have a moment to just sit in it, be sad, grieve, feel the emotions that I needed to feel. When I would be on the bus going from my apartment to my class or wherever I was going downtown, I'd put on my AirPods It was easy. It was easier to listen to music. It was easier to listen to a podcast or listen to something to drown out the inner thoughts that was myself, the discomfort. And one day, I thought to myself, when was the last time I've truly been by myself? When was the last time you have truly been by yourself? Are you letting your life be controlled by fear or by love? Because if it's by fear, I can assure you, you are running away. You are distracting yourself from the reality of you not being okay with yourself and the situation you are going through or had gone through. That's when I took a moment to decide I'm not going to listen to music, even podcasts. Now, if the music outside me was playing, of course I would listen to it. If I was hanging out with friends and they had music, of course I'd listen to it. But on my ways home, on my way to class, I would just sit there. And I would take note of how I was feeling and, more importantly, the world around me, what everyone else was doing. I started to see the small, finer details of the world around me, whether that was the flowers, the bees pollinating the flowers, people who instantly take out their phones when they are by themselves and their friends had left. I had started taking note of the color of chairs that I used to sit on. No longer was it just a chair, but it was a red, purple, gray, blue, pink, black chair. I started taking note of the flavors I was tasting when I was eating. I would go out by myself and experience, what else can I notice? I could notice the tiles. I could notice the texture. I could notice the sounds and the smells. You have your 5 senses for a reason. Don't just live with the one of the sight. Don't just live with the listening. Live with all senses. Your sight, your smell, your taste, your hearing, feeling. Look beyond you. You may be living and working towards something that is greater than just yourself. But you need to also work to that, but not live for other people's sakes. You could be living, or you could be living. But who are you living for? Now that might be confusing. You may be going on autopilot, just doing the mundane. You could be experiencing life, seeing it for what it is. Life is beautiful, it's precious, it's amazing. But when you take both sides, who's it for? Is the mundane, the autopilot, for someone else? It's for your parents, it's for your family, it's for your future self. It's for other people, your friends, your boss, your coworkers, whoever. Or is the life you're living the one you're truly experiencing, the one you're truly present and thankful for? Let me say, that one is for yourself. Who are you living life for? Is it for other people? To make them feel happy? To make them feel proud? Or are you doing it for yourself? It's your life. I think in seasons, there are times for seasons and a calling, a vocation, a purpose, and that changes all the time. I remember I was doing volunteer work. I was working 16-hour days for 2 weeks. It was the least amount of sleep I'd ever done. I was working with thousands of people every single day. Thousands. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. I put on my smile, I put on my face, and I was being helpful. I was helping, making a difference in my community. And I got an autopilot. It was interesting to see my life be on autopilot at the same time. But I wanted to put myself back in a moment where, what is autopilot? What does that feel like? And when that was done, I took a long weekend, 2 days of rest, and I sat with that. I let myself recuperate. I thought, okay. I had served that volunteer community group. I've helped. Now it's time I do things for myself. I started doing the things that I love because I loved it. I started going out to watch movies that I wanted to see. As much as I love seeing movies with friends, I wanted to do it by myself because it's my life. I started eating the foods that I wanted to eat. I started being active in the way that I wanted to be active. I started watching the videos I wanted to watch. I started talking to people because it's my life. I wanted to do it. And as you get older, there will always be a higher calling. That might be a deadline, that might be work, that might be a boss, that might be a mentor, your parents. But ask yourself and remind yourself, there's a world even just beyond that deadline, just beyond that expectation. There's more to it. When you are in the tunnel of darkness, and at the end of the light, at the end of the way, you see the light. It may be small at first, but when you close your eyes, when you close your eyes and take a moment to just breathe, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, and you open your eyes again, your eyes have adjusted. No longer are you just seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, you're seeing beyond the darkness. You can see a little more finer details. And it's when you slowly start to look at the walls around you, you could kind of see some detail, and yet you're still walking towards the end of that light, walking towards it. You distract yourself. You don't think about just getting to the end of the tunnel, to the light, but you notice the small things around you as you slowly walk around. Your ability to just look around and not just forward is huge. Take a look around you. Even now, what do you see? What do you smell? You might have eaten something earlier or drinking something. Could you still taste that? What does that taste like? What do you hear? What do you feel? If you want to stop living in the present moment, then yes, live for other people's expectations. Live life on other people's terms. Think of one point of reference only. But if you do want to live in the present moment, look beyond. Look, see, hear, feel, smell, taste, beyond. Live life, not just for other people, but for yourself. And that is how you stop living on autopilot, but taking note of the people around you, the things around you, as you do what you need to do in this world. And that is how you will stop living in autopilot. This was a slower paced video, but I thought that it needed to be slower. If you're here all the way to the end, then yes, I have this gentleman agreement. Or if you watched more than 2 videos of mine, 3 videos of mine, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything to watch my videos, but it costs me a lot to make these videos. My time, energy, and effort. Sometimes even money. So, I'd love if you would hit that subscribe button. Go watch another video of mine. See how you could also continue to grow in your life. Experience life in ways you probably never thought of, or you need that reminder. Until the next time, my name is Spencer, and I will see you later. Peace.